Welcome back to Boilers and Beyond. I'm Jordan Jones. Purdue bounced back after its loss against Iowa State, cruising to a couple of wins inside Mackey Arena this week. Now Purdue is 10-1 on the season. 2 more non-conference games to wrap up the calendar year. Then it's Big Ten time. We'll talk about the week that was, some observations, some takeaways. We'll look ahead to what's next, what's to come. Going to answer your questions on the way out. Plenty to get to today. Looking forward to it. If you don't already, be sure to follow the show on Twitter at Boilers Beyond. Always stuff to talk about. You can always send in questions for the show. Do so there on Twitter at Boilers Beyond. You can email the show, boilersandbeyondpod@gmail.com. I had a really good email earlier about some big picture stuff with Purdue athletics. I need to respond to that now that I think of it. But a really, really good one that we'll have to dive into at some point here on the show. It would make a really good summer episode, but I don't know that I want to wait that long for it. But be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. We're here every week. We'll be here the next couple of weeks. This is going to be the last episode before the new year that's like this, where we're reacting to what we saw over the past week. Next week, we've got a guest. I'll tell you who it is at the end. And then the following week, we'll have a pre-recorded episode to get you ready for the transfer portal opening in football. But nonetheless, this week that was, Purdue bounces back. It gets 2 wins. Purdue 85, Minnesota 57, Purdue 79, Marquette 59. Purdue beats 2 power conference opponents by 20 and 28. And you walk away from it thinking that Purdue had a nice week, but it was not some out-of-this-world performance week where you're just dazzled by what you saw from Purdue. That is a really good reflection of how good this Purdue team is, how good this Purdue team can be, along with the fact that neither of these teams were particularly great that Purdue played. Neither of these teams are going to make the NCAA tournament. They won't. Current KenPom projections, at least as of this morning, had both of these teams, Minnesota and Marquette, finishing the regular season at 12-19. Very different situations there. Minnesota's in year 1 under Nico Medved. You saw it. I mean, that is a cobbled together roster. I don't. If any of those guys were there last year, I don't really remember it off of the top of my head. Let me look at the box score one last time. Grayson Grove just sounds like a Minnesota basketball player. I don't know how long he's been there, but it's just not a good Minnesota team. It's a cobbled together roster. You have one guy who can really score it, but I mean, that's going to be a tough job. You hear a lot of really good things about Nico Medved. That is a brutal, brutal job. That's a tough place to win, but if anyone can do it, maybe he's the guy. And then Marquette on the flip side, and I don't say this to discredit Purdue or devalue these wins. I'm just being honest here. Marquette is your cautionary tale. You want to talk some big picture stuff in the sport. It's very interesting. Purdue has been able to take the approach where it's not very portal heavy. I watched Matt Painter's press conference after the game, and he talks about it, how Purdue has taken 4 players in the last 5 years out of the transfer portal. Be David Jenkins Jr., Lance Jones, Liam Murphy, Oscar Cluff. With the exception of Liam Murphy, those guys have all been really, really impactful. And I don't think David Jenkins had the impact Purdue thought he would, in large part because Braden Smith was more ready than expected. Lance Jones and Oscar Cluff are just model transfer portal ads, just wonderful additions. But Marquette does less than that. Marquette really doesn't add transfers. And I think it's almost impossible to take that approach that Shaka Smart has taken and not have a season go like this, where you're just not as good as you think, where your roster just isn't as good as you think. Because right now, Marquette is bad. I mean, when Purdue scheduled this series, never in a million years would Matt Painter have thought that game on Saturday, would have been a quad 4 game for Purdue. But that's exactly what it was. That was now the third loss that Marquette has to a Big Ten team by 20-plus points this year. Its fourth loss to Big Ten teams. It needed overtime to beat Valparaiso. I mean, it's not a good team. And that is that's your cautionary tale, right? I mean, you don't want to have to rely on the portal. It's a dangerous way to build your program. But when you're resistant to it, the way Marquette has really avoided using it, you open the door for something like this, where this is going to be a really, the Big East is bad, and Marquette might be able to string together some wins in the Big East. But this could end up being a really, really ugly record at the end of the year that you just don't expect to see from a program like Marquette. But I think a massive positive from this week, probably the biggest positive from this week, is Purdue on the defensive end of the floor. Context is important because a week ago, Purdue really struggled defensively against Iowa State. Iowa State got Purdue playing from behind a ton. It was making extra passes really well to wide open shooters. It was getting stuff at the rim. Marquette really dissected Purdue's defense really, really well. This week, Purdue looked substantially better. And again, the competition was not as strong. Those teams, Minnesota and Marquette, they don't have the shooters that Iowa State does. They don't have the guys that can beat you off the dribble the way Iowa State does. Purdue's defense is going to get judged by what it does against elite competition, and you can certainly say that Purdue failed its test against Iowa State in how it plays defense against better competition, but this looked like a step in the right direction. I thought Purdue looked really focused, really dialed in. Against Minnesota, it was clear that Purdue was good to let Minnesota shoot threes all day, and for good reason. It's a Minnesota team that doesn't make them very well. They're shooting 32% on the season. You'll let them shoot all day. And you look at some of the guys that they have on their roster, outside of Cade Tyson, who's shooting 40%, none of these guys you look at and say, oh yeah, we don't want him shooting. Purdue let Minnesota shoot. Minnesota went 6 of 25 from 3. You'll take that all day, especially when Minnesota's really undersized. So you weren't worried about Minnesota getting offensive rebounds. That was evidenced at the end of the game by Purdue out-rebounding Minnesota 2-1, 46-23. Purdue dominated that game on the glass. In the second half, Purdue only gave up 7 made field goals. That was the interesting thing about that game was Purdue got off to a decent start, and then Minnesota really went on a nice run at the end of the first half. It's a 3-point game, and you weren't feeling good about what you were seeing, and then Purdue just boat raced them. Just pedal to the metal and just floored it past Minnesota. What you want to see from the start, but a 28-point win is what you were out there to see. And against Marquette, Purdue forced turnovers well early on. Purdue was very ready for what Marquette wanted to do. It looked like, and I'm just, anecdotally from sitting in section 118 watching this game, it looked like Marquette was running stuff that Purdue was just waiting for. That Purdue wasn't shocked by anything it saw out there. Purdue was ready for every play that Marquette called. And it showed. It really showed. Marquette struggled mightily in the first half. Marquette finishes with less than 1 point per possession, but in the first half, Marquette scores 21 points, 0.67 points per possession. I mean, that's awful. Turning it over 8 times in the first half, none of that's good. And this game gets a little bit closer based on garbage time. Marquette closes on a 12-2 run. This was a 30-point game before the end of Purdue's bench allowed it to get to 20, and who cares? I mean, it doesn't matter. But if this game wasn't garbage time, I don't know if Marquette even gets to 50 points. You get to a certain point, Purdue forces 8 turnovers, and then it's almost like you're in prevent defense a little bit, where you're trying not to give up easy buckets, make them work, make the clock bleed, get out of there. So Purdue wasn't forcing turnovers the same way in the second half, but a nice week of defensive improvement. And now you get to a time of year in the calendar where Purdue gets some decent practice time. You know, it's December 14th right now as I'm recording this, and Purdue only plays 2 more games between now and January 2nd when it takes a plane to Wisconsin. That's 2.5 weeks where Purdue only plays 2 games. Gets Purdue some really decent time to practice, to work on itself, all of it. All of it. And that's stuff that Purdue really values, and you've seen that be a bit of a turning point for Purdue teams. You look at last season, it absolutely was. Last season, Purdue came out of the Christmas break. It beat a decent Toledo team, and then Purdue got off to a great start in January. I remember, the best example of it, maybe in Purdue history, was the Carson Edwards-Ryan Klein year, where Purdue's 6-5. It gets its butt kicked in the Crossroads Classic, and then Purdue wins the Big Ten and goes to the Elite Eight. By no means am I suggesting that this is a similar situation, because Purdue is leaps and bounds ahead of where those 2 teams were at this spot, but maybe this is a situation where on the defensive end, Purdue can get a little bit more cohesive, a little bit more functional in what it's doing, and put itself in a better position as Big Ten play gets going. I don't have access to all of the data I wish I had on this, but something I'm really interested in keeping an eye on as we move into Big Ten play is the way Purdue splits minutes between Oscar Cluff and Daniel Jacobson. Plus-minus numbers are really dangerous, especially in these games where Daniel Jacobson is hanging out on the floor fairly late so that Purdue can have kind of a functional 1-5 lineup out there. But when you look at the plus-minus this week, against Minnesota, Oscar Cluff's a plus 28, Daniel Jacobson's a 0. Against Marquette, Oscar Cluff's a plus 24, Daniel Jacobson's a minus 2. These guys are in really different spots in their careers. Oscar Cluff's a senior. He's played a lot of college basketball. Daniel Jacobson's the opposite. He missed all of last season for the most part with an injury. He's, a different body type to where he's not as fluid. Oscar Cluff he's a big dude, but he moves fairly well. He's fairly functional. Daniel Jacobson is still working on that, some of the coordination. It really makes you awestruck by what you saw with Zach Edey. Someone who was 7'4", was the size that he was, that moved the way he did, that was able to move his hands and arms the way he did. It really, really impressive. A couple things really stand out here. That just based off of the eye test, the rebounding differential is huge. If you break it down per 40, Oscar Cluff is getting 16 rebounds, Daniel Jacobson 11. It almost feels like a bigger gap than that, but that's a pretty big gap when you're talking about one guy is on the floor, the other guy's not. Like these 2 guys don't play together. They can't play together. What Daniel Jacobson does bring is the lob threat. That's a big deal. Oscar Cluff isn't a lob guy. He's not someone who plays above the rim. Daniel Jacobson is as good of a lob threat right now as I think we've ever seen at Purdue, at least in recent memory. I don't remember anyone this dangerous, and Braden Smith is such a part of it. Fletcher Lawyer is such a part of it. Trey Kaufman-Wren is such a part of it. Like it's not just Daniel Jacobson, but it's been an awesome benefit for Purdue to have, an awesome tool in its tool belt, so to speak, because teams are really focused on helping on Trey Kaufman-Renn. You can't let Braden Smith just get downhill on you. And that opens up your 7'4" guy to catch lobs and dunk it. There's a reason the dude's shooting 67% from the field. He's pretty good at catching it and dunking it. Now, he's not a destination scorer yet. You don't see him dribble himself twice, take 2 dribbles and get into a nice post-up hook shot or something like that. He's not quite there yet. Still developing. Again, and there are a couple guys who I'm keeping an eye on like this. What are they now versus what are they in 2 months when you go to the Big Ten tournament? How much growth takes place there? That's something I'm curious to see. But in these games where Purdue's got to win, you see this every year. Purdue's going to tighten up its rotation a little bit. How much of that takes place in terms of the minute split? Are we seeing I'm trying to see, I don't see a good minutes per game metric here on the Purdue website. Here we go. Right now it's about 23 minutes a game for Oscar Cluff, 15 for Daniel Jacobson. This is a little skewed by the fact that some of your games have had walk-ons coming in at the end. I wonder if that number gets closer to 30 for Oscar Cluff in Big Ten play. I don't have the lineup efficiency numbers in front of me. Evan Miyakawa probably does somewhere. But when Oscar Cluff and Trey Kaufman-Renn are on the floor together, Purdue feels really, really good. And, for Oscar Cluff, he's just been fantastic. He this week, he has 36 points and 22 rebounds. He does so on 9 for 9 from the floor against Marquette. He is 6 for 8 against Minnesota. So, that's 15 for 17 from the field. He goes 6 for 7 at the free throw line, pulls down 22 rebounds. I mean, again, this is like Lance Jones, where Oscar Cluff isn't going to end up on your best transfer of the year lists because he's the 4th leading scorer on Purdue. And the folks making these lists aren't out looking at who's the 4th leading scorer on their team to make these lists. These are generally going to be, this is the star. This is Cade Tyson at Minnesota where he's scoring 1 million points. Whatever it may be. That's probably not the best example of it, but it's the first thing that came to mind. Oscar Cluff has been the absolute perfect piece for what Purdue needed, though. Rebounding has become a massive strength for Purdue, almost exclusively because of him. Right now, Purdue's 3rd nationally in offensive rebounding percentage. Last year, it was 123rd. And when you look at an offense that's really efficient, Purdue is still number 1 in the country, Ken Pom adjusted offensive efficiency. Getting more cracks at it, you're going to score. The more cracks you get at it, the more you're going to score. It's basic math, and it just makes sense. But Purdue is doing a great job at finding ways to get more opportunities on offense. And when you have Trey Kaufman-Renn and Oscar Cluff getting these boards, they're guys who are either putting it right back up, or the old adage of the best time to shoot a 3 is off an offensive rebound. Well, you have a really good 3-point shooting team. Purdue shooting 39.5% from 3, 18th best in the country right now. This is all really, really good stuff. It is interesting to see Trey Kaufman-Renn not score as much right now through only 9 games for him because he missed the first 2, but he's down to 13.5 points a game, but he's got 10.5 rebounds, still shooting 58% from the floor, right in line with what he did last year. It is a little bit different of a role for him. He's not as much of a destination player all the time because some of that gravity has worked to the benefit of Oscar Cluff. It's really been a net positive for Purdue, even though you would love to see him, I don't want to say get over some of the frustration, but just kind of get into a couple games here where Trey Kaufman-Renn gets his 15, he gets his 20, but the offense has just been wonderful so far this year, and that's with this week in both games even. It's not like you left them thinking, my God, Purdue was just unbelievable on offense. In the second half against Minnesota it was, but in both of these games, Purdue shoots 53% from the field. Braden Smith creates stuff unlike any college point guard you'll ever see. This week he has 22 assists. It's just absurd. This isn't normal. You don't see this stuff. And there are some stats on Purdue's offense right now that would surprise you a bit. Omer Meyer's not shooting particularly well still, and he's shooting a lot. He's fourth on Purdue's team in field goal attempts, but he's shooting 37.8% from the field, 26.8% from three. He's third on Purdue's team in three-point attempts. Jakari Harris only shooting 28% from three, and he made three of them at Rutgers, I think. So it's been a tough season for him there, but he started last season slow from three too. See what he does moving forward here. Even with a few of those numbers in there, not quite where you'd expect, Purdue's right there. Most efficient offense in the country per KenPom. If you look at that Marquette game and you take a couple turnovers away early on, Purdue's putting up 90 points, and you're talking about a 40-point win. It is what it is. Those turnovers are something you've always got to keep an eye on because it's the great equalizer. When Purdue's getting shots and it's getting offensive rebounds at the clip it is, boy, you have a really lethal offense. The biggest key is just making sure that you are not having to settle for no shot when you turn the ball over. It's like Matt Painter says, you can't rebound a turnover, but pretty much any shot you put up, Purdue's getting the rebound on it right now. The biggest item from this week, though, bar none, Purdue's 2-0 in Big Ten play. And it's kind of wild that Purdue's only done that, 6 times under Matt Painter. I mean, it's hard to do. The Big Ten's a good league, but Purdue avoided the landmines that exist that Purdue's fallen into before. Look across the league right now. Michigan State got scared at Penn State. That is a bad Penn State team. And Michigan State just about got picked off at the Bryce Jordan Center, but it didn't. It survived. Illinois, it got beat. Nebraska went into the State Farm Center, gets a win. And that puts Illinois in a bad spot. You look at the 2-0 teams here. Michigan, Michigan State, Nebraska, UCLA, Purdue. Nebraska's kind of come out of nowhere a little bit. That's an awesome win for Nebraska, going to Illinois and getting that win. Price Sanford, really good transfer addition. Long live Iowa basketball, man. Long live Fran McCaffrey, Iowa basketball. He's been a great addition, though. Nebraska's 11-0, I believe. Yeah, 11-0. Won the crown last year, so that Nebraska has the longest win streak in the country, which is kind of funny. It's not like it does anything outrageously wonderful, but it's just winning games here. And going to Illinois and getting that win is really legit. It beat Wisconsin by 30. Really nice start for Nebraska, for Fred Hoiberg's team. I'm not going to consider Nebraska a Big Ten contender, but that's a team that Purdue only gets once, and it's on the road. Same deal with UCLA. Purdue goes out there. I'm not sure what to make of UCLA. It has shown some really good things. It beat Washington and Oregon, so it's 2-0 in Big Ten play. Lost to Arizona, who looks really good. Lost to Gonzaga, who's really good. Lost to Cal. That one's a little bit weird, but we'll see. I don't. Until I see a team from the West Coast actually win the Big Ten in basketball, I'm not going to believe that it can be done. The scheduling is really tricky on those teams. I know Mick Cronin will tell you that all day, but it is difficult. Going east 4 times in the middle of winter, when you're coming from Los Angeles, for those two especially, that's tough. That's tough. And, I don't want to disparage these schools, but they're not basketball schools. I mean, Oregon and Washington and USC, certainly not. UCLA has the history, but it's pretty few and far between in the 21st century, besides the nice run with like Darren Collison and Kevin Love, and then the Lonzo Ball year was awesome, but it hasn't been great in Westwood. The two Michigan schools look like your biggest threats. I mean, there's no beating around the bush. Michigan looks awesome. It's scoring a ton of points. It has really turned it on a little bit. I watched Michigan against Wake Forest and against TCU, and it wasn't that impressive. But then it goes out to Vegas for the, whatever they call it, the Players Era. 40-point win over San Diego State, 30-point win over Auburn, 40-point win over Gonzaga. It beats Rutgers, which Rutgers isn't great, but Michigan beats it by 41. Beats Villanova by 28. Villanova's not great, but still. And then this weekend, it's down at half against Maryland and ends up winning by 18. It's a really good team, man. It's a really good team, but you only get them once. It's inside Mackey Arena. I know what Iowa State did. I'm still probably never going to pick against Purdue in Mackey Arena. Get the same deal with Michigan State. Spartans only play Purdue once. It's in Mackey Arena. Michigan State hasn't won in Mackey Arena in over a decade. I believe you got to go back to 2014 for that. I'm almost to the point where I can't comment on Michigan State because I was so not sold on last year's team. And then it got the Elite Eight. It went 17-3 in the Big Ten. I don't know. This is a really good defensive team. It's a really good rebounding team. It doesn't shoot threes well. Neither did last year's team. Doesn't have that many guys that really scare you on offense. We'll see. You'd really like to win the Big Ten. You really would. I know. This season is going to come down to what happens in the NCAA tournament. I get it. There is nothing that can happen in Big Ten play to make it so that if Purdue were to not make the Final Four, the season wouldn't feel like a failure. It's the double-edged sword of college basketball. It makes for the most fun couple of weeks of the NCAA tournament. I mean, it's unbelievable from a spectator sport perspective. But, man, it's brutal. It's brutal for the players. It's brutal for the coaches that so much of your legacy comes down to the NCAA tournament when college basketball goes from being a niche sport to a truly national phenomenon. It's kind of interesting. But you want to win the Big Ten. You get a little bit favorable of a draw here. If you can put a banner in the rafters, you want to do it. Up next, Purdue gets Auburn, Indy Classic on Saturday. I don't think Auburn's that great. I think it's good. It's a strange situation. The Bruce Pearl stepping away, Stephen Pearl stepping in, kind of the little nepotism push there. It is what it is. It's not the first time that's happened. It's not going to be the last. But, I think when you look at this game, Auburn comes in 8-3, a 1-point loss to Houston, 30-point loss to Michigan, 29-point loss to Arizona, but Michigan and Arizona probably have the two best resumes in the country. It's not like they're bad losses, but it's not a good loss when you're losing by 30 or 29 points. Not a very good defensive team. It's dangerous on offense. It's not the Auburn team that made it to the Final Four last year by any means, but you got a couple of good guards. Todd Pettiford. Keyshawn Hall's more of a forward, but he can step out and shoot threes on you. He's a good player. Those guys are what you worry about. There's some length there. Auburn's a fairly long team. The SEC teams are kind of carbon copy a little bit. But Purdue's seen this a bit in Alabama, and Purdue's seen some length in Texas Tech. It's seen some length in Memphis and Iowa State. Purdue's seen a good variety of teams so far to prepare for this. Purdue got whooped when these two teams played last year in Birmingham. Purdue was the team that was still trying to figure things out. Auburn was the team that was in the national title mix from day one. Can Purdue kind of flip that script? Can Purdue be this team playing in front of its home fans that's just ready to hit the ground running? I don't know. It should be a really strong pro-Purdue crowd. It was interesting, though, because I was there 2 years ago. Purdue played Arizona, and the place was rocking. Last year, a noon tip-off against Texas A&M. Purdue struggled, didn't win. Crowd was pretty mellowed out. I'll be curious. But my hunch here is that it's going to be a pretty good Purdue crowd, pretty fired up Purdue crowd. And, I think Purdue will get it done. It's Purdue's last chance for a really quality win in the non-conference. It's a quad one game. I'd be surprised if it didn't stay that way. You got 2 quad one wins right now. Both seem fairly safe. You'd love to get a third. You'd love to stack as many as you can here because that resume is really important. It's going to be a dogfight to get into the Midwest Regional this year at the top. You've got Michigan. You have Iowa State that would like to go Midwest. You have Michigan State who would like to go Midwest. That's probably it. Illinois, I don't know that Illinois is going to be at that very top of the mix, but that 1 and 2 seed in the Midwest, it's going to be a dogfight to get that. And then you close non-conference with Kent State after Christmas. A little bit like Akron, not as good as Akron, but a solid MAC team. Hasn't played anybody. Kent State has not played anybody. I feel for those teams, man. I really do. We talked about it with Akron not that long ago, but if you're a decent enough mid-major team, no one wants to schedule you. Purdue will do it. Not many others will. It's a tough existence there. I don't envy those coaches one bit. But if you can close this non-conference strong, get 2 wins here, you're going into the meat of Big Ten play at 12-1, everything on the table for you. Before the season, you'd have taken that deal. You'd have said yes. And anytime you're in that position, you're pleased with where you're at. So we'll see if Purdue can wrap this up strong. We're in the final stretch here of 2025. 10 days till Christmas. Just around the corner. The new year is almost here. Getting items checked off of our lists. How about your insurance program? Did you take a look at that this year? If not, it's time. I'm an agent with Indiana Farm Bureau Insurance. I'm here to make sure that your insurance program is exactly where you need it to be. Give me a call, 317-846-5861, or email me, jordan.jones@infarmbureau.com. We'll make sure you're all set for 2026, and we'll talk a little Purdue sports in the process, have some fun. Give me a call, give me an email. Make sure you're all good to go here today. A couple of questions on the way out here. Will Omer Mayer be groomed into the next Braden Smith? I mean, probably not, and that's nothing against Omer Mayer. Braden Smith is an all-time legendary college point guard already, and that's with a decent chunk of his senior season still outstanding and possibly becoming the most, the assist leader in Division I history, possibly becoming an NCAA champion, he'd become a 3-time Big Ten champion if Purdue did that. He'd be one of the most accomplished players ever at the point guard position. And he's a really good scorer. He's the best facilitator I've seen in college basketball. But if Purdue needed him to be a 20-point-a-game scorer, he could do it. He's a real 3-level scorer in college, even though he's under 6 feet tall. His mid-range game is really nice. He's a good 3-point shooter. Asking Omer Mayer to do that is a really, really big ask that's probably not fair on him. There will not be another Braden Smith, more than likely, and that's okay. That's how you know that someone was really great. I mean, Purdue has not seen another player like Glenn Robinson since he left. Zach Edey wasn't that, a different type of player. You could maybe say that Carson Edwards had some Rick Mount in him. I know Rick Mount would disagree with that, and Carson Edwards would probably disagree with that too. But it's a little different. But the guys like that, you don't replicate. You don't replicate guys like that, and you're not going to replicate Braden Smith. But I think there's plenty to like about Omer Mayer. I mean, the feel for the game, you can see it. He feels the game well. He passes the ball really well. He's a natural point guard, and he's being asked to play off the ball a decent amount, which isn't natural to him. It's a very different style of basketball than what he'd have been playing professionally in Europe. Much more half court, much more sets, much more pack line defensive principles. Things change a little bit. And he's not shooting well right now. We detailed that earlier in the episode. Far from uncommon with freshmen. You see it quite a bit. But he's not lost his confidence, and that's a big deal. I'm curious to see two things with him. Number one is that volume. Is he still shooting as much as he is as we get into Big Ten play? Because that's when you start to settle into what your team does the best, and you try to focus on that. Right now, that hasn't been Purdue's best offense. That doesn't mean things can't flip, because with freshmen, sometimes it does. Think back, 5 years or so now? With Jaden Ivey in the second half of his freshman year. It just flipped. We'll see if that happens with Omer Mayer. And the second thing, how much better is he? Same deal. 2 months from now, how much better is he? He and Daniel Jacobson both. Are those guys getting better as the season goes on? Are they really taking off, hitting that escalator? Or is it a situation where they take that leap as a sophomore? We'll see. But all indications are, too, that he's just been an awesome addition from a personality standpoint, from a teammate standpoint. You hear nothing but good things about him, and that's been a really big deal on a team that has the accomplishments of seniors that it does. It sounds like he's just been the perfect add. And then I had a request to give a shout out to the volleyball team and Coach Shondell for their NCAA tournament run to the Elite Eight. I said he and Coach Painter have similar cultures and coaching styles. Two best major sport programs at Purdue right now. Yeah, for sure. A really, really nice run. As I said last week, I'm not qualified to talk about any specifics of volleyball. I simply don't know the sport well enough. I do not. I'm not going to make a fool of myself or make a mockery of the sport by trying to, because if we're going to talk about it, it deserves to be known very well. But, I do know enough to know that what Dave Shondell did this year was really, really impressive. Losing his best players, losing really good players to the portal, to replace them and Purdue to be better off because of it. I mean, really, Purdue came on the flip side of this and made the Elite Eight. It didn't make the Elite Eight last year. Really impressive. Really, really impressive. You're correct. Men's basketball and volleyball are the two sports operating at a really high level at Purdue right now. There are some individuals that have done really nice things. Wrestling with Joey Blaze and, what was the other guy's name? He beat Spencer Lee. Matt Ramos. Purdue wrestling has had that. Swimming and diving has for quite a while. The golf programs have been competitive. But, really, you don't. It's not like Purdue has it going on in a ton of sports right now, and that's not abnormal historically. But it sounds like there's a real chance of Dave Shondell winning National Coach of the Year. Good for him. I've never heard a bad thing about him as a person. You hear so many good things about him in the volleyball program. Good for him. Another really good run for Purdue volleyball. That's all I've got, though. That's all I've got for today. As I said, this is the last episode like this for the calendar year. I'll be doing some holiday travel, seeing family and all of that. So next week, we've got an interview with Bobby Buckets Riddell from the Purdue Radio Network, color commentator for Purdue basketball. We'll talk with him. Lots of fun things to talk about with Bobby, a really, really good dude. Obviously very insightful being around the program. I look forward to that. And then the week of the new year, they're on the 29th, I'll have a pre-recorded episode to talk about the transfer portal as it gets ready to open for football. We've seen some names say they're going to hop in already. Massively important cycle. I mean, you want to talk about the month or so that's going to define Barry Odom's tenure at Purdue. I don't know if that's too hyperbolic, but really important. We'll look at every position group on the roster, evaluate Purdue's need there. We'll do that. And then we'll be in the new year where it's Big Ten basketball time, and you know what it looks like. So I appreciate you guys. Thanks for listening. Be sure to follow on Twitter at BoilersBeyond. Send me questions. Won't get to them until after the new year, but send them over my way on Twitter at BoilersBeyond. Email boilersandbeyondpod@gmail.com. Be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And if you enjoyed the show, give us a 5-star review. Until then, guys, take care. Talk to you next week.